Hey YouTube, the Utopian here again. One last quick video tonight. I took the pipe, I shined it up with Rusty's rags. This old pipe, I wasn't even going to smoke it, but got a wild idea. I took the stem and cleaned it out, and cleaned the bowl out as well as I could, and washed the stem out with antiseptic. So hopefully it should be ready to go. We'll see if it even works. Feels like it's got a good draw to it. Got some Prince Albert in it, and if Granddad was still around smoking it, he'd have Bond Street in it. And I tell you, I don't think you could find that anymore. You could find the tins on eBay as a nostalgia thing, but about 20 years ago, I guess, I found a tin of it in some store, and I thought, well, just for the heck of it, I'm going to get Bond Street, because that's all my grandfather ever smoked. I'm just going to try it out. Well, let me tell you folks, Bond Street is something else. It's very dry tobacco, very grainy. It's a lot of it looks like they might have thrown in some ground up corn cob in it. I don't know, but that's all he ever smoked, and it was kind of rough. Even cobbled up, the whole thing still works. You know, Granddad, all he ever smoked was Bond Street. People from time to time would get him nice tobacco and that, and he'd smoke it for a while, but mostly because he was on a fixed income and Bond Street was cheap, I think, and he got used to it. And Granddad had a lot of pipes, and then very few of them were really high grade. They were just drugstore pipes you could pick up for a few dollars and a few dollars and change. He'd smoke them until they were pretty much done for, and then he'd retire them. And one time when I was a kid, I went out through the barn. It didn't have any stock there anymore, but had an old barn where he parked his car, and he had a workshop. And he had all these old pipes out there. And I started to count them up, and I got to 100. Plus he had several in the house that he kept in a rotation. But like I say, most of them were like this. Not fancy. Not fancy at all. He did have one that I would really like to have that one of my brothers got away with. And where he lived in Walla Walla, Washington, right out of the back of his house, off to the one side, he had a barn, but in between them, back in the late 30s or early 40s, I think he and some of my uncles had built a little summer house. a little rental house, little one-bedroom thing, cottage type. Anyway, when I was little, there was an old pensioner living there, old Roy. And he was a neat old guy. He could do a little bit of everything. He'd set up his own dark room inside his house and develop film for us. And, I remember he'd say, "Save your Mrs. Butterworth's bottles." Mrs. Butterworth syrup. It's when they had the tall glass bottles. And he would take those and spray paint them and make lamps out of them. I don't know if I have any of those around yet or not. But they were pretty neat little lamps. And he'd just do all kinds of things. Kind of handy. Do them in his spare time. And I remember, I was probably about 6 or 7, sitting on the couch, and old Roy came over, and he had this big pipe. The bowl's about that tall, about that big around, and the stem was, probably 1.5 feet long. And in front of his little rental house, there were 2 lilac bushes. Well, he had went out there and he pruned a good limb off a lilac bush that had a good crook in it. And he drilled that all up, and he made a pipe out of that for my granddad. Wish I had that pipe. I'd get a kick out of showing it to you guys. Anyway, Granddad only smoked it a few times. Only once or twice that I saw him smoke it. But he rigged up a little clamp, and he put it above his living room door, and put the pipe up in the clamp, and it was decoration. It was pretty neat. It hung there for years and years. Maybe one of these days I could arm wrestle my brother back out of it. I don't know if I ever see him again. I haven't seen him in a long time, which it's a good thing. Let's just leave it at that. But anyway, back to nice stuff. Old pipe smokes pretty good. Smokes a little hot. Of course, I've been puffing on it pretty good. Doesn't leak around the stem. I thought it might, but it doesn't. Anyway, got another smoker to add to my collection. Rusty's rags makes it look a lot better. Well, I'm about out of time again, so I better shut myself up. Anyway, this is the Utopian. I'll see you down the road.